Hola. Welcome. Welcome to Jake's Existential Kitchen. Still not in a kitchen. um, Everywhere is a kitchen if you want it to be, though. Right now, I am by a small little river. I mean, small is relative. Small river, big creek, giant stream, huge puddle, giant puddle. Yeah, I'm sitting next to a river in southern Mexico in the state of Chiapas right now. Which getting here is a part of why it has been so long since I have uploaded an episode of this podcast. Yeah, the last episode that I uploaded with Tark I uploaded it while in Maryland. It was recorded in Santa Barbara, California, and I pretty soon after drove across the United States back to the area that I grew up in. A few thousand miles. There's a death in my family, and I drove back to see everyone and spend some time. And yeah, I recorded a number of podcasts before I left Santa Barbara and the California area. A few in Santa Barbara. The one I am uploading now with this is like the intro to the intro, because I already recorded an intro to this podcast and the rest of the podcasts that I have recorded already while in California. I recorded all of the intros while I was in Maryland. Oh, hi. Hi, pups. Hello. Some dogs. Some wild dogs. Hi. What's up? What's happening? It's probably something they don't see very often. Well, actually, that might not be true. Just someone talking to themselves. This thing might die soon, so I'm just going to keep talking about this. So anyways, I recorded a number of podcasts in California with people important to me, close friends, and it's starting to rain. Let me good thing I brought my rain jacket. Yeah, so I recorded these podcasts and then subsequently drove across the country. And once I got across the country, I had a lot to do. But this podcast isn't about me and my personal life, so I'll spare you right now. Actually, part of this is going to actually be exactly about that, because now in Mexico. Hola. I am back. Yeah. Not at the same place. I had to walk back to town to get some batteries. So now I'm in some trees near where I'm staying at the moment. A little closer to town. So, anyways, what was I saying? Personal stuff, not speaking Espanol. Yes, I cannot speak Spanish more than to get by and be friendly. So, I have these next few podcasts in English with other people that were all recorded in California at this point over 2 months ago to put out maybe another 5 podcasts or so. I'm going to just try to get them out as quick as possible. Since it's been so long, I've been sitting on them, and they are all special with special, beautiful people, and they deserve to be heard. So I'll put those out as soon as I can, and yeah, considering it'll take me a while to be able to fluently converse with anyone here in Spanish. I don't know. I doubt if anybody listening to this would be able to listen to those anyways, but that is something I would like to do at some point. But regardless, in the meantime, after I upload these podcasts that I already have recorded, so yeah, when I left California and started driving to Maryland, about halfway across the country, I stopped listening to music and podcasts myself and started thinking a lot. And then I decided to start recording just myself talking about my life and my experiences. And it was really weird at first, as I talk about in the first one that I did. It's very weird. It's a very weird thing. But also at the same time, it felt very healthy and necessary just for my own self. There's a few reasons why I decided I wanted to do it. Just at the very least to get my thoughts and experiences out of my head and my body, because to be perfectly honest, my whole life, but geez, the last 4 or 5 years, whatever, like traveling around, living on the road and things have been pretty fucking wild. And a lot of wild things have happened, and a lot of wild thoughts and experiences, and not just the last few years, but yes, my whole life. And so I just for my own sake and the sake of the people that I care about and love that are around me a lot, I'll just talk to a recorder and get all my thoughts and feelings out there and process experiences and wild things that have happened to me and maybe how I feel about them now, and then just see, just at the very least for my own sake, to be able to get an idea of where I'm standing now. So I'm going to start putting those out. It's pretty personal as I was doing it and doing them. I've done a few since, just while driving, going to Maryland, and then also driving from Maryland here to Chiapas. And yeah, taking about 4,000 miles of a drive to get here. So I didn't do a lot, but I'm going to start doing that more consistently, since, I could do that by myself, and I want to just keep putting things out and expressing myself into the world, and, whether or not anybody is listening or not, I don't really mind. It's nice. I appreciate you for listening. For you to hear this right now, you're listening. I fucking appreciate you and the energy and the time and attention that you're sharing, right? It's really cool and means a hell of a lot to me. And I really hope that, anything you hear from my efforts and the efforts of those that I collaborate with can be something to maybe in some way enrich your experience and help you feel something at least, hopefully something good. So yeah, with all that being said, I guess I'll just go play the intro that I recorded like a month and a half ago for this podcast and for the next few podcasts, because I doubt everybody listens to all of these. I'll do another little pre-intro reminder of this just the time scales of all of these are pretty whacked out, and apologies for not being timely with these, but life happens, and I got stuff going on, but this is important to me, and hopping back on track and trying to do what I can. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate you for listening and sharing your attention and space here with me and today's guest. So much love. Thank you. Yeah, it's just, I was just being paranoid. I don't think those vultures are following me. I don't know. They may have. they were definitely circling for a bit there. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I should be flattered or offended if I look delicious or dead. Welcome to the podcast, Jake's Existential Kitchen. Still not in the kitchen. Yeah, it's not as fun. It's not as fun. I'm like, yeah, sorry, I'm distracted. I'm walking outside. I'm walking through, what's left of the forest that was in this suburban area that I have found myself at the moment. And it's just amazing seeing all the trees and all the different leaves and patterns and plants. I'm just, yeah, it's really beautiful. So sorry for being a little distracted, a little spacey. Yeah, it's really cool. I really like being out here. There's a lot of really cool sounds, a lot of nice sounds, and a lot of life. And life's fucking cool. Life sounds fucking cool. And talking about sounding fucking cool, our guest today, Alex Espinosa, sounds pretty fucking cool. It makes some real cool sounds on multiple different instruments, and he makes those sounds sound real cool by I don't know what, but all sorts of stuff with microphones and computers and knobs and things, and it's cool. It's pretty cool. It's cool to watch. It's fun to play with him. Get all groovy and boogieing around. Yeah, Alex is a cool dude, and this was a really fun podcast to record. We sat down and just started talking, pretty much. We were talking about doing this episode for a little while, and the both of us being kind of floating around doing stuff all the time. It was just like we just had to, all right, let's do it then, and then we did, and it was just, I think we both had a lot of fun, and yeah, it was very thought-provoking. Kind of really was able to like explore some ground that, speaking for myself, has been like a little candlelight to kind of move around in some different ideas and different concepts, and I really appreciate that. It was really Alex has a very unique perspective, and yeah, I just really appreciate him sharing himself with us and being able to just do this. And this is just wild to me. I mean, even like this right now, what I'm doing physically in this moment is it's just amazing to me. I'm just walking around talking into a microphone, just to you, talking to you, but you're not here with me at this moment that I'm in speaking from, but you're exactly where you are right now. You're totally there. Which is here right now, because like this recording will also be playing right there, right here for you, and so then therefore also in a way right here for me. So like, yeah, I don't know, it's weird, but really cool, and I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate Alex for sitting down and sharing his time with us to just explore and think and try something new. It's really cool. I will have link or multiple links to some of Alex's music in the description to this. He's also part of and founder of art collective in Santa Barbara, California, called Permitent Collective. I'll have links to that as well, and yeah, you should definitely check him out. His music's on Spotify, and other things, I am sure, but I know it's definitely on Spotify, under Preserves. Yeah, seriously, thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate Alex and the possibility for us to just share in this moment right now. Thank you. Let us welcome today, episode 8 of Jake's Existential Kitchen, Alex Espinosa. Welcome to Jake's Existential Kitchen. I'm here with Alex Espinosa, aka Ali E.
Whoop, whoop.
Hey, dude.
Hey, Jake.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
Too happy to be on my first podcast. So
we were just talking about shoes,
mm-hmm.
But also numbers. Yeah, I found these shoes in the woods up in the mountains here as I was on the phone with Lord Princess. And I was talking with them about having all these experiences with the number 23, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And I first read about this thing called the 23 phenomenon in Robert Anton Wilson's book Cosmic Trigger, and it was really wild. As I was reading, it was like all this stuff in that book. He talks about how it could be correlated with like the I Ching and like rolling like hexagrams, which is kind of like consulting the oracle sort of thing, you know. Like, have you ever done that?
I've read some things about 23 in terms of like genetics, in terms of like
chromosome
numbers, and some people think that 23 is like the borderline between like the 23rd chromosome is one that can also lead into extra chromosomes, which are like kind of superhuman chromosomes. That's like 23. There's this song by Tool. It's called 46 and 2, and that's 23 times 2. And basically the extra 2 pairs, like the 24th chromosome it would be, but then since you multiply it by 2, it's 46 and 2, is like spirit, or is like something that is not biological, but it still influences our biology, our genetics. And so to me, like 23 is just that like borderline between like the last chromosome that is physical and like the spiritual world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. Like, cause my experiences with and around it have been very much in that realm, and also from the experiences that I've read others, you know, having with it too. It's wild how all intertwined it is with the I Ching. I was up north this past year, and I remember I rolled a hexagram, which like you take like 3 coins and you just roll them, and if they're all the same, that's a solid line. If they're not all the same, that's a broken line. You roll it 6 times, and then you have these series of lines, and you consult the book, and there's these different hexagrams. Anyway, I rolled one, and then had to go somewhere, and like I didn't get a chance to like read it all, and then a couple days later, I was sitting by the fire reading Cosmic Trigger by Robert Anton Wilson, which I had just started, which Lord Princess gave to me. And it was also his copy of the I Ching that I was like consulting a few days prior. Anyways, I was reading this book, and it's talking about all these different examples of like 23 being like a significant number or date in like all these different, you know, areas, and then mentions like its correlations with our number of chromosomes, and then also some correlation with like the I Ching, and then as soon as I read that, I was like, what was the hexagram? Because all the hexagrams are numbered, you know, for each like series of lines and combinations. That they're each like a certain number, and I was like, what fucking hexagram did I roll the other day? It was like a couple days before, and I was like, oh, and I was like, wait. I was like, I gotta go get my phone and look up what I just wanted to know what the 23rd hexagram was. And so I like went to find my phone, and it was charging, and I like opened up the screen, and it was 1:23 p.m. And my phone was at 23% charged, and I was just kind of like, okay, hold on. And I just put my phone down, and then I ran upstairs because I remembered like I had a copy of the I Ching, so I just opened up the book, and I didn't remember the number. I remembered the hexagram, and it was the 23rd hexagram. So like a couple days prior, I'd rolled the 23rd hexagram and all this stuff, 23 blah blah blah, and so then that kind of started this whole like spiral. That was like not spiral, but just kind of like, oh, what's going on with this? And then reading more about it, one idea that I like is that it's like this kind of perceptive tool, or like consciousness tool, to work with noticing patterns. And I think I read something that has to do with something called like the law of fives. You know, it's just like 2 and 3, and 5, and then 5 and 10, and everything can be in some way described as like an interval of 5, or can somehow fit into that through those. And also there's some other funny things like 2 divided by 3 is 0.6666666666. But yeah. Anyways, long story. Yeah. So I was walking through the woods, and I was on the phone with LP, and I was just like, man, I was having all this wacky stuff happen with the 23, and literally as I say 23, I noticed these shoes that I'm wearing off like in the bushes, and I'm like in the middle of the mountains, but what I noticed,
the Jordans, is
the 23 on them, and I was like, and as I say to him on the phone, 23 is right when I see a 23.
And you've just found those out of nowhere.
They were just out in the middle of the woods.
They fit you, huh?
Yeah, they fit. They're a little bit too big, but but like just a tad. So I was like, I'll grow into them.
Yeah.
but yeah. So I was just kind of like, whoa, what the heck is, you know? And I told LP, he was like, dude, those are yours. You gotta take, you gotta put those on. They were just out in the middle of nowhere. I was like, okay, but.
That's fascinating.
So that actually kind of brings me to something that I was thinking about asking you is where do you think ideas come from?
Ideas are generated. I think it varies, honestly. I think that sometimes ideas are impulses that come from your body, and you can't help but fight a particular stress or a particular like elation because your body feels so good. And it influences your ideas in terms of like, so say like today I'm really tight, and all my ideas are tight as a result. All my ideas are very kind of rigid and don't flow as easily until maybe I like am talking about them, and then I'm able to recognize the parts of my body which are my ideas also in reflection, because as my brain is getting tighter because my body is, that in turn signals my body to tighten up because it's almost like a fear response. And so I think it comes from the physical body ideas, and vice versa, from the mental to the physical. But also there's certain ideas that are just pure dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, and epinephrine. They're just purely feel-good hormones or feel-bad hormones if you're lacking them. And so I think that when you have a certain amount of epinephrine in your brain or a certain amount of serotonin in your brain, say you're like smoking weed or you're like on some drug, then those endorphins, those like feel-good hormones or lack of feel-good hormones are literally like some kind of conscious spirit, some kind of universal conscious spirit's way of accessing the physical body. And so I think that like when you have a lot of ideas, it's not necessarily like all your ideas. It's your hormones that are allowing you almost like an antenna of a receiver that's
Mm-hmm.
very fresh or very that stands up straight and is able to receive a lot of the incoming information from the external world, from the universal conscious, which I kind of believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're able to like get these information, synthesize it well, and feel everything almost on a deeper level, more like universal level. And then on the days when you're lacking it, that's when your ideas are rigid because your body gets tight and your endorphin and your hormones are just out of whack.
Interesting. It's really interesting to think about our brain chemistry as different aspects. Yeah, because if our bodies, because our brains are part of our bodies, it's a whole system in itself. Like you said, the brain affects body affects the brain. So if we as whole beings are these like antennas, it's really interesting to think about how the different chemical makeup of our antennas, of our cosmic tuning forks or receivers or transmitters, whatever. How the different chemical makeup affects potentially the maybe not so much like the specific type of an idea or something like that, but our potential to connect with certain layers and dimensions of thought and of understanding and of conceptualization.
Yeah.
And so then therefore our ability to grow in certain directions in a physical and in a mental way. Because for me personally, I've felt just like a thing that's like really helped me have even just like a little bit of say in my personal state of being in that sense, like is like physical exercise, because you can literally run yourself into like dopamine, and totally. Like things like that. You can like there's ways that we can through our physical body and our will do activity. I mean, playing music, is a perfect example. Find these ways to like
music is a funny one because it's almost like in order to play music, I've made some of my muscles more rigid because of just the art of practice is an art of sitting down in a more or less unnatural position and hunched over and with limited blood flow to like certain parts of your body. And so I've had some, and especially when you're playing live and you have the guitar over one shoulder, you get certain tensions in that one shoulder and it creates this imbalance, and like that could create mental imbalance. So and it's funny because like for the longest time I never thought about that, and I didn't realize like, oh, maybe there's a way to kind of work with it and correct it. Almost like you're saying physical exercise, it's important to keep your body active. I think if you want if you want ideas that are clear, and because clarity comes just like how blood vessels flow. It's like if your blood vessels are really rigid and you don't get enough oxygen through them, then your brain vessels will also be very constricted. And they won't have the room or the almost like capacity to be able to connect the dots in your brain, your neurons. And like I like what you said, how ideas aren't necessarily good or bad, or like the spirit that is involved in you, or where you evolve from, like kind of the sentiment of your bloodline, which we all come from the same place, but over time our bloodlines differ, and as ancestral relations differ, then all of our thoughts get meshed and skewed by the weather, by cultural revolutions, by different religions we were involved in the past, by different belief systems. So it all like comes together, but that particular set of ideas that you embody based on your ancestry and based on the way the world has come together, you can access that more deeply, and even more critically you can judge your own ideas as they're passing if you have that kind of like clear blood flow. And so like as a musician, sometimes I feel like, oh, I didn't think long enough or only until I realized it was actually affecting me.
Yeah, I
My
relate.
ideas,
I
yeah.
relate totally to that.
Mm-hmm.
Physically and mentally. That's honestly been one of the main things I've personally been like trying to deal with in my body and mind over the past like year or two, which coincides very like completely with me making like conscious decisions to like to meditate and exercise every single day,
Mm-hmm.
which like is, as I'm looking in hindsight, you know, an attempt to like exercise my will to
Uh-huh.
to have effects on my body in that way. You know, it's just like, okay, look, if I can balance, you know, if I can do something that may help balance myself
Yeah.
in the moment or in the day or whatever, and orient in some sort of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in a meditative space is where I've really started to notice in my body and in my mind the imbalance, um, from specifically playing guitar. Because I played the drums first. That was my first like instrument that I got really into, and that it's like but it's both, but both arms are the same. You know, I played like heavy metal too, so I did like double bass, and both hands were like
Yeah.
I had
Okay. There's
I,
more balance in drums.
yeah,
Okay.
and I would practice like just
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
same thing
Yeah.
on each side,
Uh huh.
and when I started to exercise and do like tai chi and different stuff, it's like, oh no, you do both. You got to get both sides,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
else you're gonna start putting, you know, too many pebbles on one end of the scale or the other, you know,
Uh-huh.
and I started to realize as I started to meditate every day and actually then therefore be able to check in with my body and my
Mm-hmm.
mind, I was like, I'm out of whack.
Yeah.
I'm totally out of whack, and it's because I've been playing guitar obsessively. Like, it's so weird to me how clear my body is, like, in this weird contorted shape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and like you said, my muscles are so like tense in certain areas because of just like
Mm-hmm.
the thousands and thousands, tens of
Yeah.
thousands of
Yeah.
hours of just like doing this, and it pulls on this one muscle, and so then on just the right side of my neck there's this thing. And
Exactly.
so the other night,
Yeah.
I was up in the mountains, and I was sitting in the hot spring just by myself, and I was just like meditating, and then like I like, you know, that thing where it's just like you just, you know, just playing music in your head and then also kind of like playing it. You ever do that where it's just kind of like da, 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 da. It's like,
You mean just like translating an idea you have on the guitar?
yeah, just like
Yeah.
when you're not playing the guitar.
Oh,
'Cause, like,
yeah, totally.
Like to me, I'm nonstop, and I've been trying to learn like practice this way too, where it's like playing, like I'll play the guitar and try to make sounds where the notes are, so I feel it, so I feel the sounds inside of my body.
Yeah. Okay.
That way, when I'm not playing a guitar, I can kind of like because
Okay.
you have like the sounds in your head, and it's like do do do.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I was doing that because I had this song in my head. So I'm like sitting in the hot springs, like do 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 do. And for those of you not here that could see this, I'm, you know, like air guitaring pretty
Mm-hmm.
much. And so like I, you know, be kind of doing that. And then I was like, and because I was in that space of like having been kind of checking in with myself for you know, the time leading up to that, I noticed just how one-sided I was, you know, in so many senses. And I was like, huh. And then I was like, wait a second. And I tried to like flip my body around and air guitar from the other side. And immediately it brought up all this stuff, because I was like, wait a second, because the song that I had in my head was these kind of like, I don't want to say complex chords, but they weren't like just regular chords. They were like these weird, you know, kind of weird dissonant things that I was messing with, which like on the side of me that's been rigidly doing this like certain habit and pattern for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like ingrained. And
Yeah,
it's kind of
yeah.
like, okay, yeah, but then on
Totally,
my
yeah.
other side of the brain, on the other side of my body,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wait a second, because I have the practical knowledge. I have the understanding. I know all the notes. I know everything. I know what notes make up the dissonant sounds that I'm trying to like get for. I know that, but my hand and my arms and my
Mhm.
body and my and that side of my brain, it seems, hasn't done that before. So I just sat there and I had to like map out in my head what the mirror version of that chord would be on the other side, and then see if I could maybe do it with my hand. And then that kind of started to get me to be like, wait a second, can I like, oh, okay, this almost feels like mental gymnastics or like a mental workout where it's like, oh, hey, hold on, like I can do something here that could help, like maybe help with the flow of those blood vessels. I mean, our brains are full of blood, you know, so help with literally the flow of them. Because I'm like, if I can use my noggin to like push on ideas, you know, and find ideas that can be explored.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like a whole different person inside your head that can almost have like a secondary, like opinion or perspective on the same exact pattern that you know you can play with your right hand, but like you're saying, the patterns have been so rigid in like in your practice and in the way you've just developed as a musician. But as soon as you switch the hands and you switch the hemispheres, it's like a different perspective, and that could really be helpful. I was even thinking about this in terms of like masturbation, in terms of things like that. Like partially, what I've noticed is that like because you masturbate with one hand, like typically, then your body gets out of balance in that way too. And it's writing too, you know. And then people develop these like such dominant right or left hemispheres, I suppose, because as a society we're mostly right-handed. So I think like the idea of a society that's patriarchal and is very organized and almost disconnected from nature is a society that has grown out of this dominant left hemisphere. As most people are right-handed, you know.
Interesting.
And so our ideas as a society, as much as there are personally, are dominantly right, are dominantly organized and trying to, you know, pattern things in a way that forgets about a lot of the left-handed people, because, you know, there's not as many, and therefore like the ideas that incorporate the left-handed in the balance has been out of whack for so long.
Right.
So it would do a lot of people good, I think, to practice what they typically do with their right hand or they typically do with their left hemisphere, with their right hemisphere.
Well, I wanna go back to something you kind of mentioned earlier, thoughts and ideas passing.
Passing as in like from some kind of universal consciousness?
Just passing through, you know? It's like, this podcaster Duncan Trussell made this funny song about like, it's just in one of the lines, and it was like, the mind makes thoughts like the tongue makes spit. And I just like thought, because it's like,
it's not all for like, digestion.
Exactly. And it's not us. I think that's the kind of the point that I got from that is like, oh, okay. And that's what I've gotten as just like a side effect of meditating. Like I didn't know what meditating would do, but I was just curious. And then over time, it started to show me like, wait a minute, I am not my thoughts. These thoughts that I'm having do seem to somehow coincide with my feelings and like what's going on around me. But for the most part, unless I'm actively thinking something that I'm trying to like mull through intellectually, the thoughts are they're just like kind of floating by, you know, and it's just kind of like, oh, if I can like cling to something, I can, and like try to what's the, you know, wrestle or something. Yeah. But if I don't, then it just kind of floats off. You know.
For some people, it's not so easy. Some people like you cling to things that you don't want to cling to, and you have no discretion in that.
Totally. Yeah, but that's also what's so interesting to me is that I feel like the ability to recognize that is something that can be cultivated through like meditation and through playing music. And you know, I feel like I've stumbled upon that from just playing music and like these things that I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing them except that I like them and I feel like I should. Yeah. And then this seems to be kind of a result where it's like, wait, we don't have to identify with these ideas either. And so why I'm pointing at that is another thing that you mentioned, the how quote like most people are right-handed in our society. I think that's nonsense. I think that in itself is potentially like, I don't know, I would be curious to know if that's actually like a physiological thing or if it's like a culturally imposed rather like industrialized, culturally,
Yeah.
like imposed
That's
thing,
part of, that's part of the thing that I honestly am curious about too. Is like, they say that all children are like disposed or whatever. How to say, preconditioned to write with a certain hand. Like even before they're born. I mean, before they're able to write, they have a tendency to put more emphasis on one hand or the other in everything they do. But I'm curious if that is true, or if you only taught children to write with their left hand, they would be just as good at everything with their left hand. Does that make sense?
I kind of suspect that would
yeah.
be the case.
Because I learned to throw, like, I played baseball. I learned to throw with my right hand. I learned to throw with my right hand.
Yeah.
But then after like a year of practicing my left hand, I could get the movement down fluidly.
Right. Well, and you think about, like, you got two ships sailing parallel to each other. If one ship goes a half a degree in another direction, over time, it's going to be like hundreds of miles away, you know? And so, you know, teaching a kid to kind of go on a different direction with, like, you know, writing a lot in a certain sense, you know, with like one, I mean, think school desks are built for that, for right-handed people, you know? And that's why I point at the industrial stuff, because it's like, wait, is like, what's up with all this? Like, is it all the machines and all, like, I mean, how hard is it to find a right or a left-handed guitar, you know, all this kind of stuff. It's like, it's not as readily available. And so we're kind of in this world that's kind of set up leaning on one particular side.
Yeah.
So, like, and then the effects that has, like, physically and then therefore mentally, like, I don't know, that's it's
a lot of imbalance. Yeah,
it's curious. Yeah. And so, like, you know, do you think there's ways we could, like, balance ourselves out?
I would think that people would just have to dive into uncomfortably using their left hand for things that are typically right-handed, you know, and just practicing once a day. Like, if you just practice writing sentences with your left hand, you activate that part of your brain that is more creative and more free-flowing, and it'll break that rigidity that you built up, that society thrives on in, you know, in patriarchal kind of manner, because we're so organized and we line things up in a certain way, and we only have right-handed desks. But if people were to kind of write with their left hand, or maybe, you know, practice left-handed drumming or guitar or something for musicians, you would be able to almost activate a certain part of your brain that maybe subconsciously only would help like break some of that you know, that right hand emphasis. And as a society, I mean, it's possible we could do experiments to see if kids do indeed have an emphasis toward right hand, and that's just like as a species we're somehow left hemisphere dominated or dominant, or if perhaps it's just because most people are already right-handed through some like industrial or, you know, like societal upbringing, and that kids can indeed learn just as easily with their left hand, or be predisposed to be left-handed just as much as right-handed.
I would go to say adults could also learn that too, you know. That's like, yeah, I don't think and not that you're saying this either. I don't think that, like, it's just with the kids that, like, oh, you got to get there in the beginning. I just think pointing at that as, like, where it would likely start, you know, because it's like you're in this, like, unconscious kind of space as a little kid, and you're kind of like,
totally.
like, you're taking what's around you as, like, oh shit, I guess the world's gonna be like this, so I better, like, you know, on this unconscious level, your body is like, okay, well, if things are gonna be like this, then I gotta, like, you know, you're drawing on a whiteboard or whatever, you draw it right with your left hand, it's gonna erase it, or whatever the thing is. It's just like, this isn't built for that, so I need to do it like this. And then, like, yeah, again, those two parallel ships, you know, the half a degree off, and then one side goes and gets all sorts of out of whack. And you mentioned, you know, like the, you know, male dominant aspect of our culture, and how obviously imbalanced that is, you know, and if we have, like, the dual hemispheres in our brains, I don't know, I have any idea how our brains work, and, like, but say, you know, masculine and feminine, and then them working with each other, you know, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that everyone, I mean, even if it never achieves a balance where it's like everyone's left-handed or right-handed, and even adults, obviously they can't shift away the mode of thought and of action of writing that they've done for so many years. But there is something to say about society as appreciating art. And not everyone's an artist, not everyone's creative. But I think within us, each one of us can appreciate the beauty of nature that is art and complex and ambiguous and also unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by almost like taking an art class as a normal person, taking a workshop, doing something artistic will help with disease like Alzheimer's. It'll help to use parts of your brain that will connect with other parts of your brain that will just make us off as a better, more free flowing society instead of like such a rigid. And we're already on the way doing that, but I think we could do more of it. Honestly, I think that everyone has the ability to appreciate art, and some people don't even listen to music. Some people don't even like care to appreciate nature. You know, and I think that's kind of sad. I think that they've just become totally disconnected, and the city dwellers, people who enjoy the city, maybe that's art in itself, but there's a certain type of like nature-esque art that even the city dwellers have become disconnected from.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we are art. We are nature also, you know, in ourselves. And I know in myself, a lot of that has been a lot of my like trouble seeing that, you know, like being in cities or being with myself has been in times of my life where I'm like avoiding myself or avoiding parts of myself or something, you know, or whatever. But yeah, it's like we could like on a like because I was just thinking like I don't really write very much, you know, and like and when I like thought about all that with the guitar, I had a dream that night that I tried to play with my other hand. And in my dream it felt like the hardest thing in the world, and I because I remember waking up and being like, wow, that like with that feeling I was like, that was really tough. I was like, whoa. And then later that day I actually tried it physically, and it felt exactly like that. It was so hard, and I was like, "Oh wait, it doesn't matter how I have like the mental understanding of this thing. There's no way. Like I'm like a decade of like obsession away from being able to do this like I can over here."
Yeah, and at that point you're like, well, it's not even worth it. Like all the time I'm gonna spend just learning what I've already developed over here, just to create more of a balance. Like it's just not worth your time, because at this point, like, you have so many ideas over here that you've developed for so long that why are you gonna like start over, even if it might be better for your physical body,
right? And
like the balance.
Well,
it's just like you might as well just keep going down the path that you've already been going.
Maybe. I mean, I thought about that, but then that also makes me think about other like musicians who like aren't around anymore, you know, and things like that. It's kind of like, oh, well, yeah, but also maybe there's little ways to play in that realm, like still intellectually, you know, like if, you know, having the time to like, because it's one thing physically to learn to play the guitar again, because that's how it felt. It was like, oh, I'd have to literally start from scratch. But mentally, I can understand, and like in the same way where I can play while I'm walking, I could also do that on the other side in a sense, and so then I can work quicker that way. But also to make it this sort of concept accessible for like literally anybody. Like, what's your name, Alex? How do you say it backwards? Just try to say it backwards. Try to say it out loud. Try to say your name back. You know, like Jake, like Ikaj. I don't know, like, but it's just like it's there we go. Like that's a way to kind of like flip the script a little bit. You know, it's like we're flowing and Jake, blah blah blah, in this forward direction. It's like, wait, like what is it? I don't even know. I don't know if that's actually what it would sound like backwards. But you know, I guess just what I'm trying to do is like point at something that could be accessible for kind of anybody, you know, because I don't even write every day at all, you know, so to be like, okay, well, let me start writing with my left hand. I don't even write with my right, you know.
No, that's very true as well. Yeah.
You know, but I think this is something that like everybody has the potential and the power to start working with, you know, is the realm of ideas and to empower ourselves, you know, because I think we all play like an active participatory role in our ability to connect with the space of ideas and the space of creativity and you mentioned a moment ago like a community, you know, and just within ourselves, and being more balanced in ourselves. And it just made me think about how you and I are here talking right now, just by doing, like, by both creating things, we just wound up in the same place and have become friends from that, so it's like, you never know what that half a degree off in a direction can kind of facilitate. And so, do you think that our brains are the receivers of consciousness or the generators of it? Like, so yeah, we receive that, like, there's like the universal consciousness, but like,
I mean, I think it's both, really. It's just consciousness. We define it narrowly, because even this wood is conscious. Even that recorder is conscious in the way it's been designed by us. It reflects our consciousness, but it's conscious in itself, and it's echoing some kind of. There's some kind of reverberation in there that is going to go into a new consciousness, a digital consciousness on the computer, and be stored in binary, which can be translated in an abstract manner through sound. And so I think our consciousness is generated by us and influenced by what we hear, what we speak, what we breathe in, smells, such as how sage will almost like that level of consciousness, which is in the scent, the aroma of sage. Then it's so peaceful in itself, and it just is that consciousness, which is peace. And some people believe sage is a holy kind of cleanser. And so in turn, we attribute through our consciousness that we're generating. We take in that consciousness that is more or less dumbed down, or more or less alive, like not alive. And we synthesize it with our alive consciousness, and we make it into something deeper, according to what we know is deep. And so I think there's a certain consciousness that just like flows through everything, that's just like all around. That, for example, like the way you align your life, the way that we've met, and you're saying that 1 degree has changed so much that we've met, and you could have gone to any studio, perhaps you could have gone to any city, just by a conversation that may have switched your mind, someone you connected with. These are deeper things. This is a deeper form of consciousness that we personally have no control over, but we live in it, almost as if it's like fate. But we have, of course, our own say in it, and that's like us generating the consciousness to the fate's universal consciousness. And so, like, what I'm saying is that, like, I could be having this conversation with anyone right now, and it could be some other like drifter or someone. Like, I mean, I'm going to call you a drifter, but suppose that's kind of how
it's kind of accurate.
the only I mean, not to like put your whole being in one word, but in terms of like just having a conversation that's could have arisen out of nowhere. It's like I think all these things come together by some greater consciousness, and as much as we can generate our own consciousness to interact with it, overall I think that it's spoken for, or like where we're headed is not going to change by any 1 or 2 interactions, but it's, to us, it's the whole world, It's like me, this is like my whole world right now. Like, this conversation is basically what's going to propel me on to the next thing, and I could be somewhere else right now, but this is affecting how I interact with fate.
Right.
Consciousness.
And this is an active representation of your conscious role in your life, in your own life's trajectory, because you and I coordinated to meet here at the same time, and and so that it's like a dance, it's like those two, like our active consciousness, participatory consciousness, and the, like, let's say collective ever-flowing consciousness. We can dance with each other, and I have been like metaphorically and literally in like dancing scenarios. I've been like the most rigid, like closed off, like, oh, I don't feel comfortable dancing right now, like I just feel embarrassed or whatever, and I don't, but everybody's dancing and it's a dance thing, and I'm just like, I could dance with everybody, and we could all be together and flow, but I know myself, I'm not always, and
sometimes you can tell you don't want to dance because you're not genuinely feeling it, and you could dance fake it to make it and then start genuinely feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to go through that pressure of like someone can tell that I'm dancing just to dance and not dancing because it's coming out of my own free spirit, you know?
Yeah, and which is really cute. That's like a really cute thing that humans do. Like just like looking, trying to reflect on us. It's just like, oh, they're so just so like soft and mushy. Like we are soft and mushy things. They're just like, I don't wanna, but like, or like, I'm gonna, like let's paint, let's write some shit or whatever, and but yeah, I really really like what you said, because it's an actively participatory thing, but it's not just that. I think like we're participating with each other and with everything. I mean, like you said, this floor has consciousness. We're sitting on the floor. We're participating. Like all of this is made possible by the floor. This podcast is brought to you by the floor.
Drums and guitars.
Yeah.
We might just bring their consciousness a little bit of soul, but they're still in themselves. They have, I don't know. They came about because there's some kind of frequency that wants to be expressed, and it used us in order to be expressed. And we're putting soul to the frequency that the guitar represents, or the frequencies that the drums represent. But that is consciousness too. It's like it's using our consciousness to fill some greater consciousness, which is music, I think, in that sense.
Right, yeah, like a drum set doesn't have arms and legs to play itself,
but it wants to be heard.
It is, exactly. And so here we are. It's like I was talking with a friend yesterday about the last time I was living with a cat, and I was just kind of like, oh yeah, like I like hanging out with cats because they just do their own thing and wander around, hang out, and then they'll come and like let me know when they need my thumbs for something. They're just like, meow, here's the can, or like, the door, like I need your hands. And I'm like, sure, I got the thumbs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Totally. And also same with the like you mentioned earlier, like the art aspect of quote nature, and that's something I want to try to point at too, is the separation that we culturally have between nature and the city.
Illusion of separation, is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, and the wilderness in there, and left-handed and right-handed, and if I'm this, then I'm not that. I'm a singer or I'm not. Or whatever the thing is. I think if we can just like drop that bullshit, we could do anything, because it's kind of like, wait a minute, why do I do this? Why do I go this in this direction? But something that I feel like this area of the world from living here has like taught me and like gifted to me is to just kind of see that like, wow, like we are actively influenced if we allow ourselves by or whether we allow ourselves or not, but it can be a consensual dance in a sense, with everything that we experience, and with the trees and the flowers and the birds and the people and the traffic and the train whistle and all the stuff. And trees don't have voices, like, and they're getting cut down, and the flowers don't have voices, and the fucking water's drying up, and
that's the funny thing though, is they don't have voices to be able. They have they tell signs, but they don't have voices in the immediate, but their voice will be heard in the long term, because their roots go so deep in the ground, and we're cutting off the fruiting body more or less, in the trunk, but the roots have memories, and those memories will have voices in the future, which is why the more we disrespect nature, the more that in time it will come up with its voice. It's giving us signs because that's all it has, because it doesn't have like a means of connecting with us consciously through like our mode of thought, But it definitely, I think it does have a voice, like in a deeper sense. But I see what you mean.
So what do you think about potentially being able to tune ourselves to like, for lack of a better term, channel or be a conduit for certain frequencies of that universal consciousness, like through art, through say music, through writing, through painting.
Yeah, I have such mixed feelings about this because I thought at one point like I would be able to channel the energies of the nature of everything through like like psychedelic trips. Mushrooms kind of put you on this wavelength that where you're more or less just a being with nature. But I did it in such a way that I feel almost as if like I've incorporated some like bad spirits into my mind, and and now I'm almost afraid of what like nature's true message is, what nature's truly trying to channel or use me as a conduit for. And and I want to believe that it's like a beautiful thing. Like if you allow nature to flow through you, then your whole life will be meaningful, not necessarily blissful, but like meaningful, and like you'll just be doing what the universal conscious wants you to do, at least as much as in tune with it as you can be in your own generation of consciousness. And so, but I think ultimately for me, it's just like it does want to create music, and I like to think that it's epic, and it's like, and the reason why I'm being used to channel music is for like an epic reason, for something that's gonna impact like I mean, less than the world because you can't impact everything, but impact a lot of people.
I disagree. I like you said, this right now is your world and mine, and gonna play a part in who knows whose as they listen to this in the future. It seems like it's not up to us to be like, wait, this can't affect the world. I know that's kept me down like hardcore. It's like, but the world is made up of all of our individual worlds simultaneously. We all play this role in making up the whole. And so when you play your music through the stereo in here, and I'm in that room, and my world's over there, I can hear your world, and it's affecting my world. And then like those vibrations can come with me out. Just like what I mentioned the other day, that I was just playing it before you showed up. There's a song that like, this is a part in it that like I hear you and coming out of me in a sense, as I'm like how it just kind of happened because we're playing together a lot at the time, and so like everybody who hears that from me is gonna have been affected by you in a sense, and then that comes from everybody you've been affected by too. So we do have this like really direct and vast connection, because I mean, this right here can be heard by people all over the world, literally. So it's like, we don't even know, and yeah.
Yeah, it could be a bit overwhelming to think like that, because the more sensitive you are, the more room there is for depth of bringing it out of the unconscious, but also the more easily susceptible you are to being bothered because of your sensitivity. So, like, for example, like, I have so much sensitivity in me that if I can be strong and sensitive at the same time, I can do anything. But a lot of times I'm sensitive and I don't feel strong. And so I get easily absorbed these energies that I don't want to absorb without having the critical ear, the strong and confident ear to synthesize them into my consciousness in an optimistic way. And so I'll just get bogged down by it. And I think that's also what I mentioned, like the hormones of ideas. Like, it's certain times you just don't have like the hormones in your head. You have all the sensitivity, you have all the understanding, you have all the conscious wisdom, more or less. But you don't have like the energy to like be able to express it, right? And for me, that's like my biggest dilemma, because like I know like all I need to know to create beautiful music, but like the energy is just like not there all the time, and patience. I'm always debating whether or not like have the patience to see it through, and like maybe I'll never create something that I truly want to create, or just like absorb all the energy at once and just create something amazing and then just like die. But that's like what a lot of musicians have already done. It's nothing new.
Well, do you think you can cultivate and flow with that energy intentionally? Like, for example, like I feel like I have. I mean, like I met Lord Princess through like we both play music and stuff, and at around that time I coincidentally had started to kind of meditate. But then once we started hanging out a lot more, like a couple years ago, like just started talking more about meditation and different things, and he started showing me like Tai Chi and stuff. And through that, and through like the like standing and the standing meditation and things, that's when I really could see in myself my imbalances mentally and physically, and all these sorts of things. But specifically through like, well, through both of those, like the standing meditation and also like just like sitting meditation, even just like for like a couple minutes a day, just getting in that mindset for me has been like I was like trying to like touch on earlier, a side effect of just like experimenting with that in myself has been like seeing seeing the difference between like those things, like for me and like how I may think I feel or something like that, and then just what that has done for me in a practical sense and like in a physical sense is like for example, I remember the day I like noticed this like shift in myself, and I was like walking down the street and like this, and like nothing even happened, I don't know, but this part of my brain, this voice inside of me, which like I always thought was just like, it's me, just comes around. It's just like, you fucking asshole. I literally think I just like remembered something that I did or said one day.
Like 2 years ago, 2 weeks ago.
I was just walking down the street, remembered something, and this part of my brain is like, you're a fucking asshole. Yeah. Like, you are a asshole. Yeah. Or whatever the thing is.
That moment marks you for the rest of your life.
And but just to me. Yeah. But just to me. And just and just for me to, I was just doing it to myself. And then I'm walking down the street thinking that about myself. So how can anybody else think anything else about me? Because I'm only going to be interacting with people thinking I'm, already thinking I'm an asshole. Anyways, so like, I remember that was a regular part of my life. That was just like how I operated inside, and that at the time I was maybe like 23. and I remember just being like, whoa, like, I had just started like experimenting with meditating every day, maybe like a month or two before that, and I just remember when that voice came around, I was like, you're a fucking asshole. I could see for just like a little glimmer. I was like, wait, that's not me. That is a part of me. That's something that like got in there, but like, wait a minute. That's not something I feel. It's not something I want to say, and I think that in my life was like, there's that half a degree, difference to be like, whoa, wait a second. Now there's a little bit of space to put myself in, and what I choose into this and into what comes through me. Yeah. And then therefore comes out of me, because regardless, we are sensory beings. We're creatures here, like experiencing, like everything, and we're conduits for that, the vibrations of the frequencies of our experience. And so even just that little tiny like nanosecond of a moment of being like, I am not this anger, like I am not this jealousy, like I am not this shame that like is whatever in there, but also like recognizing that like, I also kind of am, like it is there, like nature also encompasses like the fucking jaws of a tiger as it's like eating the throat of something, it's like, that's also like, nature isn't just like soft beautiful flowers and like red-tailed hawks flying around like majestically. Like those fucking hawks are swallowing things whole, like we just don't see it very often. And so that's also a real part, like in music, like that sort of mindset has really gotten me to given me a deeper appreciation for like punk music and like death metal and different things too, because it's like oh man, no, we're like fuck yeah, shining the light on all these different parts of.
But pop music's overrated.
No, no, not I mean maybe, but there's no one thing. That's that's the whole point. You can't like just homogenize it all in once. It's just like, oh no, I'm just gonna be sunshiny all the time. It's like it's pretty all the time, right? Like yeah, I'm great. How are you? Fine. It's like yeah, but we're more than that, and we're more than it's fucking good to make some nasty sounding music sometimes, because totally. It's like fucking sometimes you just feel fucking nasty, and I think that's okay, and like we were talking about before starting this, I think that's like such a thing that's just like socially we just are just is missed a lot of the times, and it's like this kind of weird like subconscious expectation is projected about to be like, oh no, you gotta have something together, it's got to be this like really purposeful, meaningful gesture all the time, and I think that almost like denies us aspects of our humanity, because it like if something doesn't line up with this like grand role of like the savior of the universe or something, then we're fucking up, but like it starts like within us, it seems, yeah,
I get that. Kind of goes in line with what I was saying about how I felt like the universe, or I have to allow these energies to come through me in order to affect the whole world. But really, the most therapeutic thing is when you forget almost, or you pretend that what you're doing is going to affect the whole world. And you don't think about it so critically to know that it's not, but you just go ahead and do it because you're feeling it entirely with your whole being. That's the most therapeutic thing for you, instead of constantly questioning it and trying to make it sound like something that maybe you're not feeling. Maybe you're feeling nasty one day and you want to like make some metal music,
right,
but if you're thinking like, oh, this is not going to sell,
then
you're lying to yourself, and you're lying to really the conscious energies that are trying to flow through you, and they're just going to become blocked, or the lie is going to have to come to fruition. You're going to feel like shit about yourself because you've been lying in that sense.
Yeah, and like sorry,
I'll say if that is kind of like in line with what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think like what you said, like this moment is your world right now, and same for me, and I think it was Jack Cornfield, a meditation teacher who said like tend to the part of the garden that you can touch, and how I kind of think about that is like
that you touch,
that you can touch, and if we view our lives as a garden or as a little part of a garden, which is in itself still, if you're a part of a garden, you're still a garden, but a part of this whole garden of nature, of earth, of humanity, of all universal existence. But if I don't know, the tending to the part of that we can touch, to me, resonates with what you said about this moment being your world right now. And like how, I said like, playing the song that is influenced by having been playing with you, and then anybody who then now hears me playing that will also hear you. And they could be on the other side of the world. And, vice versa in whatever different direction. And so that garden is ourselves and our own like authenticity and honest state of being, and what that really
and
therein
lies like. The secret really is that if you tend to the part of the garden that you can touch, instead of trying to be the savior of the whole thing, then from that true sense of seed, from that one true seed, will grow the plant that you're thinking will, actually have immense capability. But if you water every seed or half-assed, then none of them will grow to like, to be beautiful. And that's trouble that I have too, and it's like in everything. It's in girls too, I guess. Like, I have these like childhood like rock star fantasies where it's like, oh, the girls want me because I'm cool. But that's like, if you're trying to tend to one girl and and see her as like my sole purpose right now because it's what I can affect in my minimal ability to like affect this world, then it's like a more beautiful thing than like trying to get girls because you're cool because you have an ego, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still struggling with things like that. Like I'm still struggling with like I know deep down inside me that like tending to just what I have here is the most important thing, and it will bring me peace, and it will bring just like whatever small world I affect a better, more positive vibration, and then that world in turn will affect a bigger world, everyone around me, you know. But if I'm living a lie, or like even allowing those thoughts that aren't really me to have a dominant say, then my whole world will be affected in a negative way. If that makes sense. So I think it is really important to treat the garden that you can touch, as you say.
Yeah, I mean, because it is a part of the whole garden, you know, and like if you're over there growing tomatoes, you know, and you know, basil or something like that, and like if we both can grow nice and big, then maybe somebody else can come along and like make some sauce, you know, and like stir it up or whatever. You know, it's like I don't really feel like stirring. I just put all my energy into growing. Yeah. You know, like make it something. You know, and
totally.
like and it can be, and it gives the chance, and it gives the opportunity for it to be a collective community garden. You know, a participatory thing. You know, it's kind of like I feel like it's something that like we have to give each other, you know, by giving to ourselves. My friend Michael's always like telling me to read this book, and but I just remember when he was reading it, one of the things that it said, it was talking about love, and it was talking about your love for others being most healthily coming from a place of being able to fill our own cup ourselves, and then for our cup to be overflowing, and then that with that overflow of love is what we can share with others, and the things in which we choose to direct our energy and our flow and to water, you know, the seeds in our lives with.
At times I think that sometimes you also want to empty your cup and lose your love, so that you can allow in new forms of love, new philosophies, which will, you know, fill your cup again, and then you should empty it onto other people, and then you can't allow any love inside of you if you have a full cup also. So like at times you should empty your cup to allow the new inspiration, the new love, and philosophy to really imbue you, and then once it like overflows again, then you have the ability to spread it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, interesting. What do you think your experience has been with like different loves? Like
my experience has mostly been that my cup is so overflowed that I'm not readily able to take in information and philosophy, which will help me. Like I think I like to attach myself to love too easily and idealize certain things, certain types of love, instead of like, you know, I put all my eggs in that basket, and then when none of them hatch, or even if like one of them hatches and it's just like not what I expected, I don't have any eggs left to like, when my basket's already full of these eggs of the same kind of love that like I was so sure about, you know. But I don't think we could ever really be too sure about what we love. It's not to say that you can't share it, but it always, like, you can share your love even if you're not completely sure about it, because you feel it's right, you know, and you're coming from like a genuine place. But that doesn't mean like know that your love is the only love and the best love, you know.
Do you think love has a similar sort of sense of as consciousness, and that there's this ever pervading love flowing through everything, but then also how we interact with and express love in like an active sense? Do you think that there's some...
You're saying like there's a love that's consciousness and how you express it actively?
Well, like similarly to like what you were talking about, having like the consciousness that flows through everything, and then our own consciousness that comes from interacting with all the other aspects, you know, of the drums and stuff. And so in a similar sort of sense is love this thing that is flowing through all consciousness, and then how we interact with and tap in with that love based on what our garden is like at that time.
Totally. I think that's true. And I think that it's important that I make a classification of like what I think love is. It's not necessarily joy or good intention all the time. Like I know I was explaining love in that previous context with the cup as like, oh, it's your positive philosophy, like your love for things that you want to see the world prosper. But also like love in the sense that of consciousness is like having love necessitates also breaking love. And so there's a certain kind of love which that evil love that believes it's good, that needs a good love or needs a righteous love to have meaning. And the righteous love needs the evil love to have meaning as well. And so love in that sense is just pure power almost, or like energy. Love is energy, and there's good and bad love. You know?
Interesting.
And so I think like when people, in terms of music, like yeah, the drums have love. And like you can play them with love. Doesn't mean you're playing it with good energy. It can be like a bad energy fueled love. That's like that's just as powerful as the good sometimes.
So what makes it good or bad? Where does that what is that point where it goes one way or the other? And where
that's
do
semantic thing.
Where do we meet that inside? Because while it is a semantic thing, that is a direct way in which we influence our gardens in a sense. You know how we speak of, and then because that's a reflection of how we can perceive of it. What do you think that is? Where that what's the deciding factor between good and bad love?
Consensus. Yeah, I mean, good love was polygamous love in tribal societies. It was for the sake of my future generations, despite the fact that I have, say I'm from the perspective of not the alpha male. And every male wants to be the alpha male, because that means that your genes gets passed on in tribal society. But for the sake of love, which is not going to be my love, because I'm jealous, it's like a jealous love, but for the sake of love in terms of like the progression of our species in the most strong and form, like I will let the alpha male have sex with every woman in this tribe, and I will not have any babies with any woman in this tribe. And like it switches from the love nowadays that's like super monogamous, and it's like you're not showing love to me if you're craving an alpha male, you know, like if your woman cheats on you because she thinks that someone, or maybe she's doing it out of like spite or something. I don't know where I'm going with this. Good and bad is just purely like societal, I think. It's just purely what people deem as right and wrong in order to like to produce the next generation of good beings, or based on what they think is right. But really there's no such thing as good and bad. Like, I mean, to me it would seem that like life is a lot of suffering. Like most of life is suffering. And every day I find like I'm in pain, like, and I sit in meditation and like I try to relax my body. But there's something inside my stomach and something inside my head and inside my body that's just like always in pain. And like love in that sense for me would be like, well, why am I even being alive? I'm gonna mostly be in pain. But it's those small moments of like joy that keep me going, that like I could maybe have someone have joy, and I almost don't want to have kids because I know they're gonna be the same way. I mean, a lot of people, you know, they are happy all the time, and like I don't know how that is, but I feel like most people aren't. Most people are in pain a lot of the time. Although they, you know, your normal becomes pain. But like for people like me, it would seem like love would be to renew the species, to like to put an atomic bomb over the whole world so that no one has to be in pain anymore. I know it sounds crazy, but like to me that's love, because it's like I'm doing what I know is best for everybody, even though it doesn't seem like it. And that's a lot of love too. Is like harsh, tough love, you know.
Hmm.
And like it doesn't, you can't see through it until you've like lived it, or you like because, or until. I feel like I'm going off on a tangent now. Honestly, I like, what does love have to do with it? Is part of it too. Is like, we like to emphasize love, but like everything just happens, and we label it love. We label it love based on like, you know, good intentions mostly. But that's what I'm saying. Is like love is both.
Right? Is it always good intent?
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you mentioned intentions, because that's to me what came up in my head when I was thinking about what's the point in which it turns to good or bad. It seems maybe intention has something to do with it.
Yeah. And your intention can be self-deceiving too.
Totally, and can be exploitative, you know, or self-serving, or something, or extractive in some sort of way, you know, like you could play the drums because you want to bang on some drums and get you know, because you love playing the drums, but like if you're playing the drums with somebody who's also playing a guitar, or like playing with a band or something like that, you could play the drums, but like to compliment and to like help sing in dance so to speak, in a way, you know, with the space, and that to me has something to do with the intentions, you know, because it can be really like really hard to see ourselves in that too, you know, and to navigate it, because sometimes we just don't know why we're doing what we're doing. It's just like, I just love doing, you know, I just love to play guitar. I don't know why. I'm just gonna do it. I just love to do this thing. I just love to do it. And then, you know, different reasons for why I love it come up, and you know, I can talk about them more as time goes on, but really, for me, it feels like this kind of like impulse in a certain direction through time, and then it seems to fall on me how I try to move forward, you know, and how it's like, okay, is this like, am I gonna barrel through all of this, you know, or am I gonna try to be conscious of those around me, and not just the people but everything, you know, and proceed that way, you know, or even try to really, you know.
For me, music is about remembering how profound sounds were like when I was just a kid, and how much it meant to me, just like hearing a beautiful melody and not knowing what it really meant, but just feeling the emotion behind it. It was so powerful, and like listening to K-rock mostly. And then as you grow up, you start to embody what the words are behind the music, and why there's so much emotion there. And that's what really inspired me to play guitar. It wasn't so much like I was just fascinated by the sounds. It was more like it was a journey, and I was just so inspired by the people who could create beautiful things that I wanted to be like them. I think much more than like, oh, this guitar is just cool. But I feel like everyone has that, you know, like I don't think anyone just can see a guitar without ever hearing music. Well, that's not true, because at one point there was no recorded music, and people would just create guitar to hear it. But I feel like, and even then, they heard the birds and the trees, or they heard like some kind of drop of water. It was like, what?
Exactly.
What?
Yeah.
What? And they're like, what? Boom, 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 boom. And then pretty soon they're just like, you know, and then you hear something in the birds, some kind of melody, and you're like, I want to create that melody. And then somehow you pass a twig that's like super tightly bound, and it makes this boom. And you're like, oh, like that bamboo leaf that was like super tightly bound and made this natural boom could be strung and even tighter to make a higher boom, and the guitars get made. And so it's like a constant process of like if that were the case, you know, then you just have single string instruments. But it's got to the point where like I was listening to K-rock and hearing these beautiful compositions which stem from that thousands of years later, you know, and all this recording equipment. And like now, that's pretty much what inspires me, I think, is like the evolution of music and frequency.
Sounds like is it like a sense of communion, or like a potential for communion with like all of the people and all of the birds and all of the trees and all of the things that have gone into
Yeah.
the vibrations of music as a whole that have expanded into
Yeah.
the physical reality, because it's like that is a part of like the frequency that we can tap into of, you know, within the universal consciousness, it seems. And
What fucks me up is like how play has become, like how a lot of music is associated with getting really fucked up, and it must be this high to play, it must be this high to experience that connection with nature. And like, I don't want to believe that that's the case, but like, why is it that a lot of the most beautiful pieces of music seem to be like that, or at least the ones that culturally are appreciated, you know? Like, even not the most beautiful piece of music, that's a subjective thing. Like, a lot of musicians are amazing and they never do that stuff, you know? But like, the ones that seem to get the most ears,
I think
belong to the 27 Club or belong to Epic Stories, you know?
I think that's the thing. Those are the ones that get looked at very, you know, because of that. It's like
because of the craze,
and
maybe.
and yeah,
or I don't know.
No, I definitely think there's something to that, and which is very important, you know, like big ripples and stuff.
That's almost like what I was saying when I was saying earlier about like there's sensitivity, and then there's also like strength, you know, and you can have one but you don't always have the other. And so I feel like a lot of those people are really sensitive people, and without the numbing mechanism to be able to access your sensitivity without allowing the small things of the world to feed in, to take away from it.
Right.
You know, so you have all the sensitivity plus you're numbing everything, so you can just focus on sensitivity without being overly sensitive and letting something in your mind. And I feel like that's also something that's just so profound. It's like you're able to be so sensitive and also be so true to yourself, so vulnerable. But you take something, you know, like if you're going to be that sensitive, then it comes at the cost of strength. But now you have this strength and this drug, and you're sensitive. And like maybe that's why the echoes are so much stronger as a result.
Well, that's where I think that we have the ability to work with our own energies, and to work with the energies and the frequencies in which we are interacting with, and therefore expressing from, and like being like conduits for. In a sense, like I realized this when I first came here to Santa Barbara with my friend Michael, who I mentioned earlier. We totally lived off of just playing music, and so we busked all the time, and we maybe played like a couple like, you know, bar or restaurant gigs a week or something like that. And we were both, you know, in the same in a similar place, like within this. But, you know, speaking for myself, I realized like, oh, we can't just be in the city all the time, you know, because we're playing regularly for, you know, and like I don't want to keep, just for our own interests sake, we don't want to keep playing the same thing and like wringing the same towel dry, you know, it's in terms of inspiration. And so we realized that like we had to actively experience things with our senses firsthand, that were different, that were, and for us, it like I'm super grateful, and I think it's a part of why he and I are such close friends, is that what that looks like for the both of us is like we're gonna go out in the mountains and the canyons and go backpack for however, you know, we're just gonna walk out, you know. And also, you know, sometimes we take, you know, consciousness expanding things, and which increases sensitivity and different stuff or whatever. But it's like whatever that may be, but it's like we would go and have, you know, go out and camp and be in different places and explore and you know, go find places to swim or whatever the thing was, you know, smell the smells, see the birds, and, you know, like just we were playing djembe on top of a mountain one day. We were both playing the same djembe, just a friend's djembe. And
but hearing how the reflections are at the mountain, except instead of like the farmer's market or something.
And And then we realized as we stopped and we walked down the little hill, and our friends were down on the next little ledge, and they pointed down, and there's a fucking mountain lion, like maybe like 100, 200 yards down the hill, that was sitting there and had been like listening to us.
Oh wow.
Playing, you know, and then to me personally, then when we eventually are back in the city to like play in front of people in like this sort of space, I had that energy and that sort of like experiential inspiration to then speak for. Like I wasn't like singing in my songs about the thing that I saw and the stuff right away. You know, it wasn't like that, but it was that like feeling, you know, like that, and that feeling could get expressed through some old bluegrass song, you know, that like the words aren't exactly coinciding, but they can be vehicles for the feelings and the life and the expression, and like I realized that same feeling wasn't there if I didn't play an active role in my life to have new experiences and see things that I hadn't seen before. And actually, one of the podcast episodes I did with my friend Mike, this is the first one he and I did together. He mentioned, because he spends a lot of time in the mountains and the forest too, and he talked about this place that he went to that he felt really connected to, this certain area that he said had adopted him in the mountains. And he said that when he would go there, he would always try to get there from a different direction than he had gone before, instead of just taking the same trail there all the time. So it's the same place that he's trying to wind up, but sometimes he would take an entire day or two to go through other canyons to try to get there, and then be there from that perspective. And that to me is like, okay, well, if I'm playing the same song, but if I just am just going to the bar from the same place every day, or going to the farmer's market to play without having done something new in between, without having gone out of my way to like to
it gets old, it gets mundane.
Or even just an exercise.
It could be the most exciting place in the beginning. That's how I feel about this place too, but day after day it just becomes another. There's nothing novel about it, and you're playing the same tune, the same echoes, and you're processing it. It becomes less novel to you, and fresh, you know. And I think by like going to the forest, in a way, you were wringing out that same towel of inspiration in the same cup, and like the cup was overflowing. And by going to the forest, it's almost like you emptied the cup, and then playing to the forest, you were able to fill that cup again with like a new sense of like love, you know. And then you come back, you're playing the same tune, but you have like a cup full of new motivation, new love, you know, to give out. And I totally get that. That's true. I feel like I don't nearly enough like go on hikes or experience nature, play music in nature, or just, you don't need like the drugs necessarily to get that. What you're saying is that like people use the drugs because they get so caught up in their same thing that
to break out of the habits, maybe,
or to do the same thing, like play the same sequence of notes, but with a new perspective. But that perspective is artificially created instead of like going out in nature, experiencing something.
But also not to diminish it though. Like while it might be chemically induced, maybe not artificially, but chemically induced. I don't think it's that there's any hierarchy of it. I think those two can go hand in hand.
True.
Also, and complement each other. True. Specifically with like psychedelics, for example, if used consciously and intentionally that way. You know, like in a partier sense, it's not quite as effective. But like in an intentional sense. So sorry to interrupt.
No, I think that's true as well.
Advocate for them in a sense.
Part of the reason why I'm saying like completely against that at this moment is because I'm like honestly fearful of psychedelics at this point. Like I've had so many bad trips because I've used it the wrong way, or I've used it to get some kind of deeper understanding of things that just in turn like allowed some negative energies into my mind and like consumed me in the sense that like I didn't know can separate illusion from reality, can separate my psychosis from like from what was actually real. And so I think that mushrooms or something could be a beautiful like trip like that, and I've had ones like that really have been beautiful. But I don't know, part of me just feels like if I do a psychedelic again, I will get caught up in that same thought that I've had that just totally, to this day, affects me. You know.
Right. Well, what like what you're saying, like being here in the studio the same day every day, you know,
Yeah.
without the in betweens, and so like.
But it's not. But I've tried taking like a drug in here, and it doesn't do it for me.
But that's what I'm.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You
Yeah.
know, is because it's like the drug, so to speak, or you know, the mushroom would amplify maybe the sensitivity of what you're already experiencing. Yeah, instead of being something totally new.
Yeah.
Like that's something I was thinking about recently. I was like, because you know, like
totally.
I was like, I'd eaten some mushrooms, and I was like, oh wow, I had some sunglasses on. I was at the beach, like exercising, and I just remember seeing like a little like rainbow of color reflection through the light that was reflecting through my clear water bottle. And I was like, oh wow, that was really pretty. It was very like, you know, just kind of see it in a way, and then it just made me think about back to like when before I had ever tried psychedelics and or read about them, and then thinking about and talking with people who have no experience with them, and if I were to say, yeah, I'm seeing these like rainbows of colors in a certain way, they would think that I was seeing something that wasn't there at all, you know, that I was just like making something up. It's the same as like, oh, there's a purple elephant like walking behind me, isn't there? You know, it's like no, it's just a little bit more sensitive and open to see what is here, but just from a slightly different angle potentially. And but that goes back to like what you were saying earlier about our participatory role in consciousness, you know, how our interactive abilities with everything, which is imbued with consciousness, and then also love, how we proceed through that, you know, like is directly correlated with how we then therefore move forward also, you know, and just like, I mean, because I've been in the same space too, where it's just like I'm woodshedding, I'm practicing guitar, and I'm in the same place all the time playing the same things, and it's just and hearing it bounce off the same walls in the same corners and the thing, and it's just kind of like, okay, like how can I expand upon that, and if we recognize our creatureliness, something I've been like thinking about a lot recently, just like how we're these animals, you know, like we're these like creatures that are experiencing everything through our senses, you know, our sight, our smell, our you know, we're always feeling something. Like gravity is pulling us always, you know, we're always feeling something physically, but like we're hearing all of these different things. And if we recognize that, and recognize that what we experience directly is like data input, just like with like a computer, where it's like we're biological computers, and if we're just seeing angles of corners of rooms, you know, and hearing the sounds of motorcycles driving past, and whatever the thing is, that's the data that's coming into us, and so that's in a sense all we have to work with to move forward. You know, it's like, oh, this is what's in my toolbox right now, like in my imagination toolbox, you know, whatever the thing is, and I don't think it's necessarily limiting. It's just what it is, you know. And so with that, we have the potential to like decorate our, you know, toolbox, and like maybe hand select some tools in a sense by like going and exploring the forest, or you know, or surfing, or whatever, you know, the thing is, like we can give to our senses new experiences, and you know,
that's amazing. I think what this makes me think of is like the ultimate kind of revival of experience with nature and being in tune, which would be like taking ayahuasca and going on one of those journeys. That's like you become part of nature for a certain period of time, and then coming back, and it would be so refreshing. I know it would be very refreshing, you know.
Do you think we would?
But then again, I'm thinking of it in terms of like, what psychedelic can I take to help me? But part of me feels like I've already done the other psychedelics, and like it's just I'm still curious. I'm still have that need to know or need to see something, as much as humans can experience the other.
Right. Yeah.
Like I still have that desire to do that, and like I can be in this realm without doing that for the rest of my life. But there's always a part of me that's going to be curious what lies beyond what I've already experienced psychedelically. And so when you say these things, like it all comes back like, yeah, I can go out and I could play my music in nature. I mean, I could be okay with that, but I always have this curiosity. What is the ultimate experience with nature? I don't know.
Well,
What do you think about that?
so with ayahuasca, a part of what my limited understanding is that it's essentially like orally active DMT, dimethyltryptamine.
Yeah.
Which is
But that's also a way of classifying it. But like the people who have practiced for thousands of years never considered it DMT. They considered it like spirits, considered it, the plants
for
themselves.
sure.
So
Yeah. Well, definitely coming from like a Western perspective of that. I'm like trying to point at like connective tissue. It seems where it's like what we would see, like I guess molecularly, as dimethyltryptamine is this compound that like we can recognize and confirm is highly psychedelic. It is something that if ingested in an effective dose in a human, whatever different way, will facilitate a very incredible, indescribable sort of experience. And through that lens, ayahuasca, among, I'm sure, much, much more, is an orally active version of that specific chemical.
I think it's the more
compound.
true version.
Mm-hmm.
Just as like refined sugar is not sugar cane. Refined sugar is addictive and almost like a drug, but sugar cane is good for you. It has natural properties.
Well,
so I wouldn't want to smoke DMT.
No. Yeah, that's a very like Western thing where it's just like, so I forget what the word is, but there's a word for the whole collection of and I'm not a chemist or scientist or anything, so like the collection of the chemicals within, say, ayahuasca, or like if you eat like if you find a mushroom that's growing out of the ground, like a psilocybin containing mushroom, and you are like, oh, that's growing out of the ground, you pick that and you ate that, everything that would be in that together with the psilocybin, as we as Westerners are like, psilocybin, that's the thing in that makes this effect happen, and so let's synthesize that one little thing out, get it out of the group of all these other things. But if you take one member of a band out of the group and you're like, hey, show me what your band does, they're like, oh, I mean, I can't, they're not here,
only partially.
But with that being said, dimethyltryptamine, like, that's something that our brains make naturally already. So like, I don't know, to me as not a scientist, there's just like a lot of implications within that, where it's like, okay, within those psychedelic experiences, I personally have not experienced ayahuasca, but like like I said, the implications of that chemical being also naturally within not only us and our bodies, but also in like all plants and all mammals and lives. It's like it's something that's in everything, and so that to me is like you when you mentioned ayahuasca, it's like you drink ayahuasca and then become nature for a period of time and then come back. But like, what are we otherwise than nature? We're not nature, right? Like, we're here too, we're these creatures. And so what is it showing us that we all of a sudden become nature? Is it showing us like our true selves, or some aspect of that potentially, and this you know, from two people who have not drank it, like speaking on like hearsay.
I mean, I would think that it would just expose you to certain parts of yourself that you're hiding from yourself, so that when you come back, you fully faced it. You've faced your demons in a way, so that you don't have to think about them anymore. Honestly, it's more of like a numbing mechanism than anything, but better than heroin, better than those, because it's like you're not numbing it, but it's still there. You're facing it, so that you can conquer it. Because if you're going to become back from nature back into this physical body, then you have to conquer it.
Could you make friends with it instead of conquering? Also, just as like an option.
I suppose
like
by conquer, yeah, I do mean like ameliorate it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that brings me back to what you're saying about the balance between sensitivity and strength, you know, and that being like a potential for that to be cultivated, or to not just be cultivated, but for that sort of thing to be acted upon, you know, and for a chance to, but that's also for me been one of the most healthy and beautiful things about spending a lot of time in the mountains and in the forests for me personally, because with no drugs or anything, I'm just like there, and it's just like now I have space. There's nothing else going on. I have to face shit's scary. I mean, I've been followed through the mountains by mountain lions and shit. I've run into bears, all sorts of shit, you know. It's just like, that shit's scary. Scary stuff happens. You run into your fears, you know, and then when nothing's happening, you're alone with yourself in this way. And just like with psychedelics as well, like, you know, we can run into those things in ourselves, and we can, you know, choose to face them. You know, I think even if we're in an ayahuasca ceremony, you could still resist. You know, it's not like a guaranteed thing. Like, we still have to do the work, and reach out our hand to the thing that we're ignoring, to be like, if we wanna be friends with it and move along and not be in this conflict.
What is it that you think we're ignoring?
Probably varies from individual to individual, but I think that, I mean, there's definitely things that we're ignoring, like collectively, you know, like ignoring or just not even like bringing to awareness things like we were talking about, like, oh well, like everything's built in a certain direction, and like, so obviously we're lopsided, and like nobody, you know, it's just even small things, you know, it's just kind of like, gosh, yeah, I think of so many examples, but
okay, yeah. Damn, it's the moment of the talk where we just take a breather and just think about.
It's good.
No, I definitely have enjoyed talking about these things, because it's kind of what's always on my mind, and talking about it just brings a temporary feeling of relief, because it's always going to be there, you know, the questions, and just like the more you talk about them, and the more you reflect them off the walls and hear it back, the less weight they hold in your head,
and potentially the more that we hold in ourselves as we not only bounce it off the walls but each other. You know, and that's why I was saying before this, I with the podcast, I want it to be like a two-way street too, so that could potentially be a large collective of like, what about this idea, or what about that, or something, you know, because I think that makes us stronger and gives us the potential to be more grounded, in a sense, to see those things that like we may be ignoring, you know, that I think it is up to us to like figure out what those are in ourselves, you know, and then therefore, and as a whole, you know, because as we're talking right now, like, neither of us are alone in this moment, but in general too, you know, as when we're not hanging out, we're not alone in it, even though it can feel like it, at times, you know, but it's just not the case. And I think for me personally, being in spaces where I do feel like I'm just alone and in not only like thinking about these sorts of things, but like feeling the stuff too, you know, like that's where so much of like the just difficulties and stagnation and stress, you know, and tightness will come from, because I'm just like, it's alienating, you know, but it's also not true, you know, like we're all here together, and in some way, like, you know, we can try to figure it out together. It's like we got to do the work like ourselves, but like, you know, if we're all in our own little parts of the garden, you're like, what did you use over there to get those tomatoes so big? Like, how did you, what did you do? Am I overwatering? You know, like whatever the thing is. And so with that, yeah, I really appreciate this conversation and getting to hang out. It's really cool for me. It's like,
me too.
Been really looking forward to doing this for a while. It's like,
yeah,
I think you have a lot of really beautiful perspectives and thoughts. Really appreciate you sharing them with me and with everyone who's listening as well.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. It's definitely been a good talk, and I hope some people can find some wisdom here. Yeah.
I think so. I think you've shared a bunch. Well, thanks, Alex. And thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks for listening, everybody. That was Alex Espinosa. I appreciate you and the time and attention that you gave to hear us both talk. Yeah, really thank you for listening, and yeah, catch you on the flip side. Hope you have a beautiful day, night, morning, whatever it is. Just, yeah, sending love. Till next time.